So hi Siju, thank you for joining us for this podcast. So I just want to start off by asking you've been at TransGrid 2 years now. What have been some of the biggest challenges you faced and where do you see opportunities?
Right, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to actually have a conversation. Yes, it's been not exactly 2 years, 1 year and 11 months to be exact, so one more month to actually get it.
To get there.
So in terms of TransGrid, a bit of history. TransGrid is an ex-public sector organisation, so it got privatised 3 years ago. So the beauty of the business is actually you have a management team with a private sector mentality and I would say a bigger part of the workforce, which is still out in the public sector. Mm-hmm. Quite diverse in terms of the mindsets and the culture perspective. I was brought in mainly to actually lift the procurement brand within the organisation, considering being a private sector, so a public sector business in the past. There was heavy focus on governance and compliance. Mm-hmm. So it was more around, hey, have you done this? Have you gone through that process? And, have you completed that form? Kind of thing. So that was not being seen as procurement as a service or an enabler. Mm-hmm. So the lifting the brand was so much closer to making sure the fact that we are seen as a service enabler business. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we've been asked to actually make sure the whole procurement experience is actually being changed or uplifted. Mm-hmm. And for me, in today's world, technology play a massive role to make that happen. So within TransGrid, we use an ERP platform which is almost 35 to 40 years old, which has been customized multiple times, and to an extent where you can't untie that any further. Mm-hmm. So another challenge was actually to make sure we have the right technology platform which will help us to take a lot of practical procurement away from the team and make sure we focus mostly on the strategic and service side of the procurement. So if I take it from a branding and a technology perspective, the first challenge was actually to change the perception of procurement within the organization. And for that purpose, it was so important to make sure there is a clear roadmap or a strategy that has been developed to actually explain to people where would you like to take procurement to. Procurement is not rocket science. All of us are actually procurement professionals in one way or other in our personal life. We go and make the purchases for our own need. Like if you were one of me, I go out and then make a purchase after doing a lot of research on internet, but I still go back once I buy and have a look, is there anywhere else that you can get that for a bit more cheaper. The reality is for me, it's actually that satisfaction of making sure the fact that I got the best value for money.
Yeah.
But when you actually try to talk to people to apply the same principles in a life of professional, where instead of $1,000 you got $10 million to spend, we seems to be not taking that much of seriousness in that activity. Yeah. So that perception of, hey, I'm here, procurement professional, try to make your life different and easier, is a bit harder to change. So TransGrid traditionally is a maintenance and construction business. So in theory, I'm dealing with a group of 950 engineers. And whoever dealt with engineers, no criticisms for engineers, there is a certain way they will work. And if you go outside that regular box, it's hard for you to convince them. Yeah. So the challenge of actually doing that brand uplifting within that group was mostly done via relationship building. So, so to make sure the fact that we are not here to dictate someone, we are here to actually help people. So, lifting the brand and culture was one of the key challenges. The other challenge, as I said, was the major challenge. There are multiple challenges, but when you asked to pick me the top, one I would say that was actually getting some funding invested into the technology side of procurement, because it's so critical in today's world. Because you live in a world where you can buy things via eBay and Amazon and other stuff. You make a choice on your pajamas, at the middle of the night, and then you get the thing delivered the very next day. That sort of kind of purchasing, buying experience, and here we are on the other end telling people, okay, fill in this form and then come back to me after 2 weeks, and then I'll go out to market and get you a proposal in 3 weeks, and then we do an evaluation, and then we find. So it's kind of, we're making ourselves unpopular. Yeah. So that investment in technology was so important for me. So, and also it's not going to be that cheap to get a right level of platform on board. So to convince the business to invest that and also to make sure the fact that there is a return on investment propaganda that we're putting in front of them, again, was a huge challenge. The long story short was actually it took me 12 months to convince the business to actually do that, but I thought it was worthwhile. If I be blunt, my credibility is online if I don't deliver it, but at the end of the day, we have a business case approved, we're implementing a new ERP platform, and I'm very positive of the fact that that will uplift the whole experience of dealing with procurement. So, one thing I would say, the word challenge, I don't use the word challenge in the world of procurement, I always use the word opportunity.
Right.
Because end of the day, if we don't actually have opportunities in our life seems to be quite boring. So the whole provision is actually every day will be filled with opportunities. It's all about which one we pick and what priority we give them, and on a regular basis to make sure it is actually making the whole experience fulfilling.
And some of the people I've spoken to, they've stayed in similar roles or the same role over a long period of time. You seem to enjoy the moving through different roles. Does this reflect your interest in procurement transformation?
Technically I've been mostly doing transformation roles almost for the last 8 to 9 years. And there is a silent agenda for me on this as well. So for me personally, so my background is I'm a chartered accountant, and I left the accounting job a long time ago, mainly because no offense to any accountants out there, but I kind of found it quite boring. It's a personality thing. When I was asked by one of my previous CFOs when they want to build up a procurement team in Australia, and I put my hands up, and I never turned back since then. But one thing I also understood is the fact that procurement, sometimes we make procurement look too complex and technical. The reality is there are practices and frameworks, but it's not rocket science. And then there are certain people who always get cornered of the fact that you don't have experience in that industry and this industry kind of a thing. So for myself, I wanted to prove the fact that procurement is not rocket science, and no matter which industry you work in, the framework and the basic principles are the same. So every time I made a move over the last 15 years, it was with a different industry. There is a recent statistics which shows, in today's world, most of the people who really want to make a change, they don't stay in an organization for more than 2.5 to 3 years. And that's mainly because a standard transformation, together with seeing the first level of outcome, can take you around between 2 to 3 years. And once they actually become the BAU, they kind of get bored. If you ask me this question in maybe 10 years' time, I might say I would prefer to stay somewhere for a long period of time to act. But I feel like there's some extra energy within me right now, which I want to make the benefit of not only just me, but for the profession. That kind of the motivation for keep going. But also remember, procurement community in Australia and New Zealand are quite small. So if you literally mark up a project, there's no way to hide as well. So when I say move, what I don't mean to say that actually move rapidly. It's making sure what you've taken up, you've delivered, you've seen the first level of outcome, so that you're not just going off after just implementing it, and then ensuring the fact that the people who invested their time and money on you are actually satisfied. Then be open and be moving on. The moving on is pretty much going to help you from 3 perspectives. One is actually to get that diverse experience from different industry. The more the people you work for, the more different culture and mindset you work for, the better the person you will be. And finally, it's actually help you for your confidence level to ensure the fact that you automatically, when you try to talk to senior stakeholders who are actually from different industries, get the confidence, by the way, I've done that, I've seen that, and I've experienced that. So that gain your inner conscious about the fact that, no matter what challenges thrown on my way, I can deal with it.
I guess just reflecting on that and noting you've had a variety of different roles across procurement, to what extent across some of the different organisations there, do they have common features or what some of the areas that are most different across the variety of organisations you've worked for?
In terms of opportunities, which in other words in this context around challenges, they're kind of similar in nature. And that's not unusual. So the different forums I go to, the conferences, all the people talk about procurement challenges are pretty much the same. One of the biggest challenges is obviously the buying from the management. It is a big part of procurement transformation success. There was a conversation I was actually having with someone the other day around SRM. So it's one of the trend words that's been used together with transformation in today's world within procurement. And I just said this, if your management is not buying this, don't even bother wasting time on this. The reality is, if you want to get up the chain in a management, the word relationship is very sensitive. People tend to say, "Oh, you kind of take the relationship. I own the relationship with the director or the exec of that particular business," kind of a thing. So it's actually explaining to people the fact that this is not about we owning the relationship. This is more about us putting a structure around the relationship. Because Australia, if I take Australia as a market, it's a niche market, away from everything around the globe. A lot of things are quite expensive in this place. And as you would know, once a smaller business is doing well, a big business will come and buy it off. So which makes our supply market quite niche. So when the supply market is quite niche, the opportunity to us to get a highly competitive project by project benefit is very minimal. This is the area where SRM plays a massive role, because what we need to do is actually to ensure the fact that our strategies, our roadline, our pipeline of projects is marrying up with whoever we're partnering with, and there is a mutual understanding in terms of how we're going to work together, how we're going to mutually benefit each other, and how we're going to assess the fact that both the parties are getting benefited out of it. So to going back in terms of the challenges, one of the biggest challenges is management buying into it. The other part is actually, I've been doing procurement for almost 16 years now, right now, and the reality is there are still some family barbecues I go to where people ask me the question, "What do you do?"
Yep.
And I would say procurement, and what is that?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And if you're quite into something or you're quite passionate about something, and when people ask you that question, that makes you think, well, hang on, you've been working on this for this long, and there's still people out there who don't know what is actually. So that education bit, which is heavily linked to the cultural perception of business around procurement, is also a massive challenge. So these two, the top buying versus the people's buying into it, is actually a common theme that you see within any organization that you get into work to. There are other challenges people can nail down to, but if you think about it, the base cause is actually these two. So for you, when you jump into an organization, personally, that's the exercise I do. If you ask a category manager, how do you actually, so on your first week of the job, what you would do? I would say in my life, when I was category manager, my first thing I do is a spend diagnostics to understand what is the playing field, how is it categorized, where are my opportunities. Similar to that, if you're a procurement professional getting into an organization, for me, it's to understand your playing environment, which is basically how much buying is there from the management and how much buying is from your peers and other parts of the business. If you have a clear understanding of it, the rest of your strategy is actually developed on that, because that's your first step before to get your into that particular organization. So it is important to make sure the fact that we have a clear understanding of the environment before we do anything. So, and that has always been one of the major challenges I have personally experienced, and seen people sharing as well on a regular basis. It's been the same topic for at least for the last 10 years. Every time you actually have a round table with procurement professionals, they all put in the same thing. So hopefully, together with academic role and other people who are trying to educate and make this procurement as a formal profession, uplifting the young talents to actually jump in there. Hopefully in the coming years that perception can be changed.
And looking back at your time at New South Wales Trains, your approach to supplier management there surprised some people. Do you think the public sector is evolving and developing a more balanced approach to relationship management from what you've perceived?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if I give an example, right, it's good that you brought that Trains example up. So the reality was actually, there was a perception in the public sector you can't actually work closely with the supplier. Because, if I give Train as an example, Train has I'm talking about this 5-10 years ago, has a past where it was too big, where left doesn't know what right was doing, and was one of the main agenda items in the ICAC discussion for a long period of time. So, because of that fear and because of that particular understanding of, hey, you can't work closely with your supply group, there was always a wall or a filtering activity that was created for you to have any connection points with your supplier. That was translated into policies, procedures, additional sign-off, additional approvals, and other stuff. So I remember the time, when we were trying to initiate the concept of SRM within the Trans business. So they always talk about innovation in all businesses.
Yeah.
The moment you start talking about procurement innovation, I was told, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, mainly because because you can't actually, you need to have an open and clear relationship with your supplier. And I'm all up for it. You should have an open relationship. That doesn't mean that you cannot communicate openly with your supplier. I once had this scenario where, every time I talk about something, the advice I received is, ICAC have said don't do it, ICAC have said don't do this kind of thing. So I ended up actually looking at a meeting with the commissioner of ICAC at that time. His name was Ro, and I went down to him and I said, do you know your brand is being used as the reason why innovation cannot be delivered in the public sector? And I remember his furious response of saying, first of all, we are not a policing body, we are an advising body. We give advices, doesn't make people to make that as a rule and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of understood one thing. One is actually what has been the purpose is not how it has been received. So from there, what we did is actually, I actually ensure the fact that I just don't want to say and repeat what ICAC is saying through my words. I want them to say that directly to the people. So one thing we did is actually, as a part of this SRM program development, we did a supply conference. So we had, at that time, we had the Secretary of Transport, Tim Raven. We had the CEO of our business, Rob Mason, together with our exec team. We took, the top 100 of the supplier business. We actually organized the event, and then I invited the Commissioner of ICAC as one of the guest speakers. And one of the themes that we provided to them was actually the fact that, how can public sector work effectively with the businesses out there? And he was out there and he was actually saying to people, in some of the things he said, make sure you at least have a monthly coffee catch up with these people. And he was openly saying that because even coffee was supposed to be declared in the gifts and register kind of thing. And it kind of, that motion was created that you can't work closely with suppliers. So SRM, and the word SRM was actually, the word relationship was quite a big problem in government. We even ended up in changing SDM, Supplier Development Management Program, just to make sure that the relationship word is not being misused and other things. But the end goal was actually to develop that openness. So if I give an example of one of the things we did with the suppliers to make them feel that we value them, is one of the supply conferences we had. We actually had around 200 people. So we had a table of 10 and there are 20 tables. So what we did is we made sure every table had a representative from the transport team, and then every table had a theme. So it can be the technology platform or the other services we offer. And we also made sure the fact that one of those members in those tables have a business which actually falls into that particular category. What we then ask them is actually, as a part of a collaborative exercise, is we ask them, imagine it's your business, come up with top 3 things which you would actually do in your business if it is used to belong to them. Yeah. And there was a reason for that. So all of them, not top 3, they came up with top 10 and other stuff. What I then did is actually I introduced a cartoonist to the room. And I said to them, right guys, okay, now explain your idea to the cartoonist. Let's see whether he can translate it into a visual way. And at least 70 to 80% of those ideas went away because those were all blue sky. The reason why we did is actually we want the suppliers to understand it's so easy to stay out and talk about innovation, but then when you are actually in the game, the practicalities of implementing it is limited. But again, most of the tables came up with at least one, and the cartoonist actually did a cartoon out of it. Right. What we then did is actually we asked the secretary together with our chief exec to select the top 3. And my commitment to the group was actually, by the time we meet next year, at least one of these top 3 will be implemented. Again, the reason why we did that, One is to make people understand and supply group understand they have a bigger say in how we can improve. And I want, if that get implemented, the supplier on that table, when they actually, kind of see that getting implemented, they can have a personal connection to us. And it was from that event where I had a discussion where this thing was actually achieved. The reality was, we ended up in delivering the top 4 out of that thing. And some of the innovations that you see nowadays in the train stations and others is actually as an outcome of that particular event. It was received in such a positive way by the supply network because we also did a program called Voice of Supplier. Mm-hmm. So it's actually an independent interview kind of / survey kind of session where they have the opportunities to say whatever they felt being anonymous. Mm-hmm. And one of the common things that came out of it was actually it was quite refreshing for them to see public sector businesses valuing the relationship because they believe it can actually add more and more benefit to the business. Mm-hmm. It's still continuing. It is actually going really strong and positive. We have at a New South Wales government level more SDM programs where more and more agencies are actually getting into it. The reality is an SRM program can take easily from 3 to 4 years to start delivering benefits. Mm. It is not an overnight benefit exercise, but the working together and the relationship benefits can be started getting seen in the first 6 months. So, we need to have that buy-in from the management and the patients to say, hey, it is going to take a bit of time, but the end outcome and a long-term benefit of it is actually beyond imagination. So yeah, SRM was difficult in trains, but the whole approach we took to make sure the fact that people are seeing the real reason we're doing it, rather than some procurement people coming back and saying you have to do everything by me. Yeah. So that was the real outcomes were translated to the message that we were trying to send to people. Mm. And my biggest advice to whoever were doing SRM is, because it takes longer time to start getting the real benefits, the small wins you have up front, make sure you market it to the extent by which you can be the marketing manager of yourself. So make sure you get all the small wins, the publicity, which makes people feel the fact that, yeah, I can see the difference. Because if you don't do that, someone else will take that particular under their umbrella, and then all of a sudden your SRM concept is actually going to lose relevance.
And as a leader in the procurement profession, when building a procurement team, what are some of the qualities you look for, and how do you weigh up people's procurement experience, their qualifications, and their general business acumen as well?
Yeah, so good question. So the reality is, anyone can join procurement, that's a reality, but if I look at my team today, almost 65% of them are engineers. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't, I don't know. There is no such thing called, you actually need to have a certain background to get in there. Mm-hmm. But there are some basic principles. One is, your biggest differentiation point in today's world, being in procurement, is how best you use your soft skills. If you think about it, the AI, the artificial intelligence, and the robotic technology is taking up a lot of manual tactical job. Mm. So my view is all those tactical work in procurement over the next 3 years will be completely getting automated. And we need to show the differentiation factor. It's more like, there is a lot of debates that we do about human versus robot. I think in procurement as a profession is a classic example where it can actually have a massive challenge. Mm-hmm. I believe what differentiates us from a robot or a machine is our soft skills. Mm-hmm. So if I'm looking for a person or a future procurement star, I give a lot of importance to their soft skills. And the benefit is, and that's why I believe if you look at a lot of training programs, including the one Academic Work was doing with FCIPS, yes, there are some basic framework kind of things, but on the other hand, there are a lot of soft skill testing kind of curriculums as well. Yeah. That is so critical, and that's why I actually talk to people nowadays and say I get a lot of questions when I do guest lecturing as well. So one of the common questions I get is, how can we get into procurement? And I would say, the best thing you can do is actually, number one, like any profession, like if I take my example, I'm an accountant. The reason why I actually ended up in registering with Chartered Accountant of Australia is because I see that is how I'm going to stand out from the standard crowd. And that's where, SIPS and others actually play an important role. Why? Because people always look for a point of difference today. And that point of difference has to have a basic platform. I'm not saying the fact that you should go and get 10 different certifications. This is mostly making sure what can help me to grow in the future. So coming back to the question, in terms of the qualities, that soft skills is so important for me. Experience are absolutely relevant, but if you think about it, procurement as a formal profession is not more than 5-10 years old in Australia. People call it supply chain, people call it commercial management, people call it, contract management. There's multiple names of procurement out there. For me, procurement is a sum of all these things. It's end to end. The moment that we have an idea until that idea gets delivered with the help of third party and going beyond on an ongoing basis, it all comes under the umbrella of procurement. So soft skill and relationship skills make a massive difference in it. Because if you think about it, if you have a financial advisor, you go to that particular person, that person gives you an advice, and then you start seeing the difference of that advice in your life and your financial management. The next year, you automatically go to that particular person because we have gained the confidence, and vice versa. So if you think about it, if you are expecting people to come to us, not because they are forced to come to us, what we want them is they're coming to us because they believe in us and the service offerings we're providing. That can be only achieved by the relationship building and the trust that you gain from that person. So soft skills are going to play a massive role in the future. Also, always having a look of the bigger picture. So in the world of procurement, you always talk about the TCO, which is the total cost of ownership. We are very much focused on that particular project and the best deal we can get out of it. We as procurement professionals should always look at the bigger picture, and that's again the value that we can actually gain. Also, one of the other things, what makes us massively different from a lot of other business units within the organization is the access to data and how effectively and efficiently we use that data to the benefit of the organization also makes a difference. So that commercial acumen is actually going to become. So it's a combination of soft skills, commercial acumen, and I would not say the fact that I will always look for industry experience a long time. I myself is against it because I'm actually trying to prove it through my own life that it is not the truth. But on the other hand, the fact is soft skills and commercial acumen and that willingness that I'm ready to take any challenges and I want to make a difference can actually get you to any level within procurement.
And you mentioned a bit about your guest lecturing and you're obviously very active as an FCIPS. Why is it important to you to be so involved and help promote procurement as a profession?
Yeah, it's people will laugh at this comparison that I do, but it's more like this. I do have a beautiful daughter. Her name is Rachel. I had this problem of when I was growing up. I wanted I used to play basketball, but I wanted to actually excel myself in basketball, and then. Because of the timing and my other study commitments, I ended up in doing it. But when she was born and when I started seeing she's getting taller like me as well, I made sure she's actually now doing basketball training on a regular basis.
Right.
And the moment people talk about basketball and kids, you get so passionate about it because you're so much into it. For me, the job I do and the procurement profession is very much closer to me. So I would love to hear people talking, with a lot of pride about procurement. I'd love to get more procurement professionals out there because what I believe is the opportunities procurement professionals can bring into an organization is not being very well explored in Australia. So to answer your question, it's very closer to my heart. I believe there are a lot of passionate procurement professionals out there, which I constantly meet. And if collectively we do something about it, it's all a matter of time. This can actually get quite advanced. I've been traveling, and I've seen this massive difference. I've been traveling to, if I give example, Europe and Asia. One of the things I've commonly seen is the number of people that work in Asia compared to the number of people working in procurement in Europe is at least 5 times bigger in Asia.
Yeah.
But the relevance a procurement professional gets in Europe versus a procurement professional gets in Asia has 2 different things. And that has to do with are we proud to be a part of the profession? Do we see it more than a tactical work? And that perception is important. And if I could actually do my little bit to make sure, and as a part of when you do the fellowship, that's one of the major oaths that you actually take. You will work towards making sure that you do whatever you can to actually be a giver and at the same time, contribute to the profession. So I take those things quite seriously. And end of the day, if you can turn one young youngster into this profession, I think we are giving back what the profession has given. So personally, I would say profession has only actually made me feel better as a person and feel better as a professional person as well. So both in a personal life and a professional life, it has only given me good things. So, and I want to make sure I do my bit to actually give it back to the people out there as well. So that's why a lot of people actually misjudge of the fact that you like to do these things and you like to get out there and I'll tell you one thing, it's not easy. It takes time and effort. When you do presentations and prepare for presentation, again, you're doing it just for the love out of it, not that you're not getting anything benefited. So, but having that mentality and more and more people having that mentality will actually help this profession to get into that level where we all dream of.